Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Hauptman, Volunteer Coordinator at Moms Clean Air Force. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Before we begin, please introduce yourself in the chat by sharing your name, personal pronouns, and where you're joining us from. A couple of quick housekeeping notes for tonight. This session is being recorded, but only the presentation slides will be shared afterwards, not any of our discussion groups. Please stay muted unless you are speaking, and feel free to use the chat or raise your hand with any question at any time. One of our favorite community principles is take space and make space. So we encourage you to participate fully while also leaving room for others to share their experiences and perspectives. So let's take a look here. Oh my gosh, we have people from all over. Tampa, Wisconsin, DC. Welcome. Virginia. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Our agenda tonight is as follows. We'll have opening and introductions, then we'll have Advocacy 101, Rowley, and then we'll leave some time for question and answers. And with that, I'm so excited to introduce my colleague, Sam Schmitz.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks, Melissa, for being here too, and to all of our wonderful guests. I'll be doing a little bit of housekeeping on the tech side. If anyone needs me throughout the program, you can just send me a message. But I'll also be presenting, so if it takes a little bit for me to respond, that's why. But first, I just wanted to talk about our mission at Moms Clean Air Force. We're a community of over 1.6 million parents and caregivers around the country, united against air pollution, climate change, and toxic chemicals. We fight for justice in every breath and to protect children's health. And a big part of what we'll be talking about tonight is that we work to democratize decision-making processes that may otherwise be inaccessible to parents, to caregivers, to kids, to folks like you and everyday people. So every parent obviously deserves the right to feel empowered and to be able to influence change. So we're going to teach everyone how to do that tonight. And I hope everyone is excited. A quick example of how we do that at Moms is that we had almost 50 moms testify at EPA this fall about why they need to continue to regulate climate emissions. That was regarding something called the endangerment finding. If you haven't heard of it, it may come up again in this program. It's an ongoing fight of ours. But regularly, we engage people with tens of thousands of petition signatures, thousands of folks around the country attend events, and we have hundreds of meetings with lawmakers each year. So we're all excited to have you and to plug you into whatever drives you and whatever your specific calling is. And we hope these tools are helpful. So first, I also wanted to ground us in the power of advocacy. I know this can be a really challenging time for so many reasons, both in this country, internationally. And it's really important that we fight the apathy that can come with that, right? So there's a rule in advocacy that says that 3.5% of the population is needed to create meaningful social change. So that comes in the form of collective action. It means we're doing coordinated actions together in community and banding together to overcome a shared problem. It means we're pooling resources, skills, ideas, building capacity like we're doing tonight. And working together also lowers the risk for any specific individual, right? It's a really scary time for people in this country, especially those that are the most marginalized, but it's a lot easier for them to take action when they know that their neighbors and their friends and the other folks in their parent groups are doing it with them, right? And it makes a much louder message to our elected officials and to decision makers when we do it together, say the same thing in different ways, and just really keep surround sound about the problems that we care about. So this is another quote that is often thrown around in movement spaces, but the power of the people is greater than the people in power, right? So that's why we're all here tonight. And it's important that we continue to fight back and build the people power of our movement. I will pass it back to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Sam. Um, Yes. So, like Sam said, obviously we talk about air pollution here, and we just have some basics here about air pollution, where it comes from. There's definitely many sources, power plants, cars and trucks, factories, agriculture, wildfires, and more. We are especially concerned about how vulnerable air pollution is for our kids because their brains and their bodies are still developing, and they have a lower ability to fight those toxins. They breathe more air per pound in their body weight than adults. And in the United States, 4 in 10 people live with unhealthy air quality, both outdoors and indoors. And more than 20 million Americans are living now with asthma.
And I'll take it back to talk about obviously a very related issue near and dear to our hearts at Mom's Clean Air Force, which is climate change. So, climate change, again, we're just giving you the overview. A lot of you probably know a lot about all of these things already, but wanted to make sure we're level setting and that everyone's grounded in the same basic information. But climate change is caused by greenhouse gases, things like carbon dioxide and methane that are emitted from burning fossil fuels. So these are things like coal, oil, and gas that are often used for different kinds of energy. So these gases trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, and that is what warms our planet and disrupts the climate. This also leads to more frequent and more severe extreme weather, which can be anything from flooding to extreme heat to hurricanes to wildfires to tornadoes and so many others. And a big part of our campaign at Moms is also fighting plastics and petrochemicals, which are derived from fossil fuels. It's a similar industry as the fossil fuel industry. And this is sort of like the next move on the fossil fuel industry's part, because as we decrease our reliance on fossil fuels for energy, they want to make sure that they're continuing to make as much money as possible by increasing global plastic production, which is now set to triple by 2050. So this is all about maximizing profits for them and ultimately puts many communities in harm's way. So we want to call that out and make sure that in our advocacy, we're very aware of the role of climate change and plastics and petrochemicals in contributing to climate change and also to contributing to the fossil fuel industry. And back to you, Elizabeth. We'll just keep going back and forth.
Thank you for that. Well, just like this, we have partnerships with many folks, and especially talking about the health harms that comes with climate change in our kids. A lot of folks with Clinicians for Climate Action, as well as the American Lung Association and others. But things that we'd like to talk about, or we wish we didn't have to talk about so much, is asthma and respiratory illnesses, worsening allergies, increased risk of Lyme disease and other illnesses, heat exhaustion and stroke, obviously adverse birth outcomes due to low birth weight and stillbirth. Mental health impacts are also something such as eco-anxiety and climate-related trauma. I can speak here for myself and others in Michigan. We have had a slew of tornadoes, and I know that it has made our household, our kids in our household, a lot more anxious. And I'm sure others are experiencing that across the country as we are having this influx. So I will turn it now back to Sam. And of course, please, as we're talking about this, share some of the things that are happening in your state as well in the chat. I would like to know what health harms are happening across the state.
Yeah, great point, Elizabeth. And feel free to raise your hand too. We'll take questions as we can and as is appropriate. But excited to have you all here and trying to make it as participatory as possible, while also giving you lots of information to keep fighting back and keep doing what you're doing. But one more sort of foundational pillar of environmental advocacy is environmental justice. So the premise that unfortunately environmental hazards and climate impacts harm some communities significantly more than others. And that is done deliberately, right? communities of color and lower income communities living on the front line, or what's sometimes called the fence line, where they literally share a fence with a facility that's polluting their backyard effectively, often face the worst health outcomes and also economic impact. So this is unfortunately compounded on higher rates of poverty, lack of health insurance access, lack of accessible healthcare options, and that just further worsens those disparities. And fossil fuels unfortunately harm these communities disproportionately throughout their life cycle. So from extraction, when fossil fuels are being taken out of the ground, to transportation through communities, to usage, and to the burning of them for energy, these have really disproportionate impacts. And I just want to call out a few specific statistics that Black children are 5 times more likely to be hospitalized with asthma and 8 times more likely to die from asthma than white children. 68% of Latinos live in areas that do not meet federal air quality standards. So these are really, really vast disparities that we're working with here and trying to combat. And we just need to make sure that we're centering those experiences and those voices in all of the advocacy that we do and partnering with communities that are feeling the worst impacts of climate change. And I know this is all some really difficult information to process. So we're here to talk through it as you're sitting with this, but we also are obviously going to teach you ways to keep fighting back and being part of the solution. And I'll go back to Elizabeth now to turn it over to a hopefully more hopeful note.
Well, this is, like you said, the hopeful part of this is we get to advocate and we get to advocate as ourselves. One of the big things that we bring to one of our this movement is our own experiences and our own strengths and passions. This helps us think about ways we can contribute. For example, healers might be doctors working on the front lines. Weavers might help connect climate justice with racial justice, and builders may organize mutual aid and networks. Caregivers support families and communities directly. Storytellers help us understand how people and communities survive, adapt, and thrive. If you just want to take a moment now and think about which role or roles resonate with you most, feel free to drop those in the chat. And I'm going to give you all a few minutes to take a look at this diagram and populate the chat, and Sam and I will read some off. Or you can raise your hand and feel free to tell us. I consider myself a healer and a storyteller. A healer, caregiver, medical student, awesome. Weaver and builder, amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you all sharing that. All right, let's build on that. Oh, thank you. Um, so let's build on that idea and framework from Ayanya Elizabeth Johnson that helps us identify the climate work that best fits who we are. Some examples from our broader climate community is Esteban Getz realized his strength was humor, so he began incorporating climate into comedy. Susie Hicks combined a love for theater and education to create Susie Hicks, the Climate Chick, helping children learn about climate solutions. If you want to take about 3 minutes to reflect on these three questions, what brings you joy? What are you good at? And what work needs doing? I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. I love seeing the connections in real time too, Sam. It is really cool. And I appreciate everyone participating. All right, no pressure. You can jot down some thoughts and we can come back to this later. And I invite anyone who feels comfortable, though, please share in the chat. And now I will turn it back over to Sam.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I will maybe give it 30 more seconds just to see if anyone wants to share. Would love to hear from anyone. I know this is a lot to process, so I can also share for myself something that I've been working on lately is at the intersection of climate and sports. I think this diagram really brought that to light for me that something that brings me joy is sports. Something that I'm good at is, I think, connecting with people over my love for sports. And obviously, climate action needs doing at a rapid speed. And so, how can we mobilize communities involved in sports and sports fans to take climate action and see and understand how extreme weather is going to be impacting them and their sports and their love of sports? So, that's one of the creative outcomes that I got from this activity. But I see Julie in the chat before we go on, spending time with my daughter, organizing others, networking, working at local level politics, and fighting data centers. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, that's a great example. We've got another one, helping others in any form that I can. Totally. Yeah, this is great. Thanks for sharing. Feel free to keep sharing these ideas throughout the program. We would love to keep hearing everyone's ideas. But hopefully this inspires a little bit more of your action and just gives you a sense of what us as environmental advocates and what you all can do by just brainstorming some strategies and tactics that we often use. So 3 buckets we're looking at here is influencing decision makers, which we'll talk about at length towards the end of this program, educating the public, and gathering people. So this first bucket means we're educating decision makers, right? Our lawmakers don't know everything. They certainly need our help in informing them on what they should be doing, how they should be acting, what they should be concerned about. And it's our job to get them that information and to advocate on behalf of our communities, our kids, and our future. And so that can come in the form of signing petitions and writing letters or giving public comments and testifying at hearings. So what testifying means, it's sort of just a complicated word for telling your story to an elected leader. So anyone can do that from the local level to the federal level. And again, we'll talk more about this later. Another big one is educating the public. So getting people to connect with your story or connect with why this matters to you is really powerful in terms of relational organizing. So you can write to your local newspaper, which Melissa's going to tell us all about. You can also share articles on social media, right? Your community, your family and friends, you probably have a lot of trust with them and they want to know what you think of things. And they probably listen a lot more than you might think. And the last bucket is gathering people. So getting people together to think about solutions, to take action together, to form that collective action muscle is really powerful. So things that we like to do at Moms are have postcard parties where we send postcards to officials. Really fun and creative and feels important. Oh, Elizabeth has one there. Perfect. You can also do phone banking, especially around the time of elections. You can call voters to register to vote, to get engaged in elections, and then obviously protesting in the streets or in whatever small forums that you feel comfortable protesting. Okay, next, how do we do these things? We plugged into our community to
Hey,
be able
Sam,
to
your
execute these
audio's a little
tactics.
unsteady, just FYI.
Oh no. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
can hear you
okay?
a little better. Awesome.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully it was just a blip. You talk about in community with others because it's way less fun to do things on your own. It's way less effective, right? So start asking yourself the questions of our community that feels like they know everything that's happening or they want, right? Those people that you want to start connecting with so they can connect you to other people that might want to take action with you. What communities, groups, identities do you belong to? Is when I play soccer, I talk to those people that I play with. They want to go to, right? It's you're in a lot of different spaces that maybe don't feel connected to work, but there's a lot of people likely in those spaces that are interested and willing if you go. really talking about it. You can also look into different email lists in your area. Parents are one, Facebook groups for parents, and groups in your area. To everything, want to get connected in your local community. And if you feel like there's a group that doesn't exist that should, make one. Coming together with your neighbors to make a neighbor Facebook group, or getting on Nextdoor, or organizing with your PTA, a group chat of soccer moms, or supporting other parents, kids with asthma.
Sam, your audio went out. But while she's trying to get her audio back in order, a great example of joining a Facebook group, there was one of our organizers who caught onto a Facebook group that was talking about a data center. And then they had a chance to join forces and advocate together. And it was shut down. Janie Black, who is on this call with us, you'll have to go onto our Moms Clean Air Force page and check out that article about that story, which is just one of many great examples of how getting plugged in has worked out in wonderful ways. You want to try again, Sam? Oh, still can't hear you. If you
She's
want to
on
move,
she's on mute. She's on mute.
Okay.
oh, there we go.
There's actually two of me here, which is really fun. So hopefully one of me will start working. But we will see. So yeah, thanks for stepping in, Elizabeth. And Janie, I'm so glad to see you here. You're such a rock star and such an inspiration to so many people. So hopefully these are some helpful examples for folks and get you thinking about where you can plug in that you're not already plugged into. I think with that, I will pass it to Elizabeth. I guess my Wi-Fi situation should have been a sign for that anyways. But there you go, Elizabeth. And soon we'll pass it to Melissa.
Yes, thank you. And thanks to everyone as we work through these technical gremlins as they happen from time to time. Um, One of the most powerful tools that we have as advocates is our own personal story. Um, we get to share our unique experiences with climate change, extreme weather, or air pollution, and how those experiences have affected you, your family, and your community. They can include all sorts of things. Like I mentioned earlier, we have had an influx of tornadoes here. We probably will experience wildfire smoke as well, flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards. It doesn't have to just be extreme heat. We also are experiencing drought. And like I said, some, mental health or anxiety around what is happening um, with our climate right now. So, as you think about your story, you think about the broader impact. Could this happen to other people or other communities? What is the larger issue? And help you tell your story. And remember that you are the expert on your own experience. Your voice does matter. And you can also strengthen your story by weaving in facts and resources from our website. Um, and finally, every strong story includes an action. What do you want people, decision makers, or communities to do? And I think these are some really great storytelling examples. And in fact, shout out to Janie again. She is featured on this slide as well. But here we have just some examples of storytelling. And I know once again, as you can see here, there's a picture of my son. He has asthma. So climate change and poor air quality impacts him, as well as over 140,000 children here in Michigan. And I learned from our fact sheets that are on our website, as well as doing this for quite some time, that in Michigan, we're ranked the fourth hardest state to live in if you have asthma. So I include those things when I talk about how this is impacting our family. And then, of course, I call for our local officials and lawmakers to do everything from transitioning to electric school buses to making sure we have the best safeguards possible for our kids as far as it comes to protections for our air and water. So, um, some basics of, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think next is the video. So you tell me when you want to play the
Oh,
video.
yeah, I was going to say, if you would want to go ahead and play the video, and here is another even better example of two of our tiniest activists.
Awesome. We'll hopefully not have technical difficulties with this, but wanted to show you this very cute video that is also very compelling, just to inspire everyone and make sure everyone feels that they can tell their own story and that if kids can do it, you certainly can too. And I know Melissa will give us even more tools after this, but hopefully this makes the process feel a little bit more accessible. So let me get it started and someone give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you can hear.
My name is V.
And my name is Tali. We're 9 and 12 and we're from Maryland.
We want the EPA to preserve the endangerment finding to protect our health and future from climate change.
Earlier this month, our town flooded with 5 inches of rain all at once. And our basement flooded. I even saw a car face down in the water and someone had to be rescued. It was really scary.
Our generation is expected to live through 3 times more climate disasters than our grandparents. EPA, do your job to protect us. Protect the endangerment finding.
Thanks for humoring us in watching that video. I hope that it was inspiring for folks. I know it always gets me, so glad we're able to share that. And just a nod to the endangerment finding again, which is the EPA's fundamental ability to regulate climate emissions that is currently under attack by the Trump administration. So lots of actions that you can take on that on our website. And this will be something that hopefully you continue to hear about as we fight back and hopefully win.
My name is V.
And my name is
Sorry,
Tali.
we're going again as I try to get through the slides. Here you go.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. And that was a perfect example of telling your story from your perspective. They are a few examples, but we have quite a few young advocates who have testified before EPA. We have some veterans that aren't even the age of 16 yet. So quite a few folks that have had a chance to do that. I would like to say too that we'd love to have folks get involved, and we call it the action or speed of moms or nap time activism. It's we know that everyone is trying to be balancing their work schedules, their kids' schedules, and everything like that. But we make it easy for folks to participate. We have ability for you to share and sign petitions on our website. We would love for you to reach out to a neighbor and reconnect with a friend. Tell them about Mom's Clean Air Force and the resources we have. Find one way to plug into your local community. Download a fact sheet about electric school buses and attend a school board meeting or share it with a classmate and your teachers and your school board. Just some little small examples of how you can advocate and tell your story and the impacts that you can have by doing just a little small 15 minutes of your day and time. So why is media engagement so important? Media engagement is one of the most powerful tools that we have in our personal stories. You can share your own unique experiences, and you have an opportunity to talk about things that are impacting your life. And it is my pleasure to have somebody who is an expert at this talk about this even further. It is my pleasure to introduce Melissa June Rowley. Melissa is an author, award-winning journalist, and has a global communication strategist. Over the past 20 years, she has produced and written for major media outlets, including the BBC, AP, CNN, Reuters, and Rolling Stone. She has advised organizations such as the United Nations, the World Bank, CARE, and many others. Her new book, Beyond the Mic Drop: How Our Stories Shift Culture, Power, and Policy, explores how storytelling can build movements, strengthen democracy, and inspire change. Melissa, we are so excited to have you with us tonight. Please take it away from here.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Sam, and thank you everyone so much for having me. You can probably tell I was trying to move my ring light around, and there's like this strange phone shadow in my face, but you'll just be looking at the slides and listening to my voice, so hopefully that's not distracting. So as Elizabeth was just touching on, media is one of the most powerful tools that people potentially have at their disposal if they can meet the right person, develop the right relationship, get the right pitch in, get the right timing. And I want to talk a little bit about how to best position yourself and how to angle your stories around that. So as I'm sure, like me, many of you are feeling and have been feeling overwhelmed, particularly in the last 2 years. I know the first 2 months after the election last year, I couldn't think about anything else other than all the executive orders that were happening in rapid fire. And then shortly after that, all of the environmental rollbacks. And it was just kind of hitting me like a ton of bricks. The only thing I could do to feel better was write. I took to my Substack. I was walking into rooms, sharing my ideas and my stories and my rants to anybody who would listen. And the great thing about today's media age is that as fragmented as it is, and as much doom, gloom, and corruption and political influence that we're seeing in places it shouldn't be, we have information at our disposal unlike we ever had at any point in modern history. So I just want to set the stage with that really important silver lining to all the overwhelm that we're experiencing right now. In the midst of that overwhelm that we're all feeling, journalists definitely feel it too. They're constantly being inundated with pitches. They're being given green lights, red lights, or yellow lights by their editors, by their publications. As I'm sure many of you know, legacy media is in a rough place, not just with these mergers, but with censorship, with First Amendment violations happening left and right. But then again, at the same time, they're cracking stories just like a lot of creators out there, just like everyday citizens are doing with their own tools, their own hands, eyes, and ears. And many people against their better will are becoming kind of amateur investigative reporters. And in doing that, there is so much power. There's so much power. So as I was saying, journalists get overwhelmed. When I was freelance writing about 10 years ago for The Guardian and Fast Company and some other outlets, I would receive about 25 to 30 pitches a day, whether that was about a tech startup, a humanitarian initiative, a refugee tech initiative, some new business popping up somewhere, or some global issue. What would always stand out to me was the most human-driven stories. Now, many of you are volunteers and activists and advocates already, so I'm sure you are no strangers to this fact that the grammar of emotion is always going to hit people more deeply and in a more nuanced and sophisticated way than any fact or jargon is. Excuse me. So the grammar of emotion, that's something in my book. That's where that word came from. We don't have to delve too much into that, but we know that emotions will always trump facts when it comes to reaching people. And you don't always need to reach the masses. You don't need to have an Instagram following of 300,000. Sometimes you only need to reach the right person, that one policymaker, that one legislator, that one councilman, that one person on your student board that can make a difference in your child's gym care class, and if they're able to reach their asthma medication on time, examples like that. So as journalists are getting flooded, whether it's through news alerts, DMs, tons of pitches, many that sound exactly the same, what I hope to impress upon you is that you don't need to start with a bunch of facts, like I said, or jargon, or even broad context on what the story is. What cuts through the noise is specificity, tension, a real human angle, especially right now because people are craving stories that feel real and tangible and grounded in lived experience. We're spending so much time online. We're spending so much time doom scrolling. We're spending so much time consuming information on a regular basis. It's almost this is for another Zoom call probably, but I think it's too much. I don't think that our brains were built for this. Yet we're doing it, right? And so the things that are going to stand out, especially now when everyone is using ChatGPT and everyone sounds the same. They're not just overusing M dashes. They're using comparison syntax structures. You know, they're starting to all use the same tone and write in fragments. I'm seeing this every day on my LinkedIn. It's driving me crazy. So standing out is going to come down to how personable are you? How human is your story? How much clarity do you have in what you are trying to articulate? So rather than start with the broader context of, say, the chemicals in the air, the rise in pollution, some of these factoids that are very important to any story, but think of that as kind of, that's the inverted pyramid, right? We're taught in journalism that the pyramid can go like this or be inverted, broad, and go down to the point. So what I just said right there was the inverted pyramid. We're going to want to start with the pyramid as if you're in Egypt, right side up. Start very singular with a personal story, whether you're talking about yourself or whether you're talking about your child, whether you're talking about a colleague, someone in your community. So the example that is here on the slide is, so we could have started this subject with, there's a lot of pollution in Tampa, and I've got an expert or I've got a local resident who can talk about it. Rather than do that, start right with the person, a Tampa mom, on what it takes to keep kids safe during dangerous air quality events. Many of you are living this story right now, right? So, and as Elizabeth said, you only have to be the expert of your own story, and no one is going to tell your story better than you. So grab your mic or grab that pen, grab the phone, grab your smartphone, grab your social media, and start with that personal story. That will get a journalist's attention far more than any factoids. Dare I say, even some data. It is important to have all those facts ready to know those story, because if you get an interview, which we're going to get into next, you're going to want to be prepared to have some of that context available. So, yay, you got the editors, the journalist's attention, you have an interview, now what? So I'm going to go through some steps to help guide you if you get an interview, and what can potentially help you make a mark in a really positive and way that's going to penetrate that journalist's psyche, what they're thinking and what they're feeling when they talk to you. So again, lead with specifics. You don't have to overload anyone with facts. If anything, we're living in a world where I don't want to say that facts don't matter, because to us they do, right? To people that believe in climate change and believe in climate science and believe in the truth, yes, they absolutely do. But what I mean by facts, you don't need to overload people with facts. Sometimes we can get so concerned with the facts and so caught up in the argument over that we try to almost kind of fact check people into submission. Many of you probably see this when you see people arguing online in comments, or maybe some of you are in those debates yourselves, where what can happen often, and this isn't so much in media pitching, but you might be arguing with someone and sharing a link and a source to support whatever argument it is you're making, rather than taking a step back and looking at what you're saying. Oftentimes the person may just double down on their argument. This is called the backfire effect. So we can't fact check people into submission. We can't fact drive people into interest either, right? So redirect always back to what's lived and personal. Shorter is usually stronger, right? Brevity. Editors, journalists, producers, writers, they appreciate brevity. Like I said, people are getting inundated on a regular basis. What makes people listen? Clarity, emotion, humanity, trust. Remember, no one tells your story like you. So I'll give you some examples. Sometimes people may feel the need to cram every fact or factor, like I said, the context at the beginning. It's really easy to get nervous in situations like this because you don't want to miss your shot. You don't want to miss the chance to really make an impression upon this person who has said that they're open to capturing your story. And suddenly, people can try to start explaining the entire climate crisis or public policy landscape or health impacts all at once. Meanwhile, a reporter is usually looking for one clear through line, one strong quote, one mic drop moment, one really human moment. No, I don't want you to stress about, oh gosh, what is my one soundbite? You can get to that later. If you're really clear on your why and your purpose, and I know this sounds kind of cliche, but if you're really clear, it's just going to come to you organically. So here's some examples. Shorter is often stronger, like I said. And another thing, you do not have to answer the question exactly the way it was asked. Really strong interviewees bridge back to what they actually want to talk about, right? They bring it back home. So if somebody asks something broad or political, you can redirect it back to your specific lived experience. Something like, what I keep thinking about as a parent is what I saw the kids on the playground have to breathe in that day. Something I've personally noticed in my community is X, Y, and Z. What concerns me the most about living in this town during an age when all these environmental rollbacks are happening in real time is that it's happening faster than we can keep up with. I think through lines like that are usually more powerful than trying to just spew out facts. So I'm going to move on now to the next slide, which is this 20, Elizabeth?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So writing and breaking through the noise. It's really noisy out there. Basically, that's what I've been saying this entire time. It's really noisy. And it is a challenge, I think, to stand out, not just to a reporter who's getting a ton of email pitches, but on social media, right? The algorithm rewards outrage, and misinformation and disinformation travels faster than the truth, which is so tragic. That's why you see so many creators, right? And some of you might be some of those creators just spewing things out really quickly in a heated emotional way. And emotion is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But to break through the noise and really be human, nuance is impeccable. It is so important to include to remember the nuance, the humanity. This is why we're doing all of this, right? So when I see stories that cut through the noise, whether it's online or something I'm reading or a pitch I'm receiving or a pitch I'm making for a client that I do communication strategy for, we want to give people a story that they can live inside, right? Rather than this just happened to me, this terrible tragedy just happened to me, right? Maybe that's very true, but what if we can also reimagine a different future and imagine a future where every child can safely play outside without their parents checking air quality apps first, right? So give people something that they want to see themselves inside. Because if you do that, you can give people a role to play. People engage more when they feel like they're joining something that's already in motion. So if you think of something like Mom's Clean Air Force, I love the name Mom's Clean Air Force, right? Because not only does it sound majestic, but it's already in motion. It is a force. It is a force of nature. It is a force of community, advocacy, and truth. It is a force, and that's why so many of you are here. Move beyond the fear and doom, the fear and doom, the gloom goom. We don't need to just describe what's broken. In many situations, that could be the leading hook to your story. Some unfortunate accident or some story, some health issue that you or your child or someone in your family is going through. So I don't want to discredit that or take the importance of that away from anybody. But I do think that in environmental justice and in climate justice, the narrative tends to lean so much on the trauma that the solutions and the incredible, miraculous things that are happening in communities, in some of the communities that you're in, sometimes that gets lost in the larger media narrative. And that makes us seem like we're on a losing team. And nobody wants to be a part of a losing team. We need to give people a world that they want to live inside. We need to create a winning team. Okay, let's move on to slide 21. So now op-eds. So op-eds and thought leaderships. This is one of my specialties. I love writing op-eds of my own. I love writing op-eds for founders and activists and organizers that I work with. And yes, editors get inundated with these as well. I can't stress enough how it is important to develop relationships. And there's no such thing as being too bold when it comes to reaching out to an editor and journalist. People have as a journalist, some people have DM'd me. Some people have done strange things to stalk me. Some people have, done really bizarre things to get my attention, which that's for another call, I think. But so we don't want to go too crazy, but there's no such thing as being too bold, because you might have the exact anecdote or example or piece of color or character that an editor and writer is looking for. You might hear nothing. You might hear nothing back, but it does often take 3 to 5 times for someone, not just a journalist or an editor, for anyone on the face of the earth, especially now since we're also ADHD, it takes 3 to 5 times of seeing something for someone to think, oh, maybe I should actually take a look at this. This looks like it could be interesting. So again, when it comes to writing these, again, I lead with emotion always. Lead with something really personal. So I don't recommend this formula of writing, but I will confess that up until the last 2 years of my life, right? And as Elizabeth said, I just got finished writing a book. For years, for a good 15 years, when I was writing blog posts or articles that range from 500 words to 3,000, I would sit in front of the computer for 2 hours until an opening came, until the dilation happened, until something emotionally resonant enough and felt like me, that felt so much like me that it was undeniable. Like, no one can deny this truth, and people are going to feel exactly what I feel because I am so grounded in my knowing and my truth. Sometimes to get into that practice, I would open with a quote, a really crazy or sexy or fascinating, intriguing or disturbing quote, right? So with something like with this kind of advocacy, perhaps opening up with a conversation maybe one of you just had with your 6-year-old daughter, who just came to you and said, Mom, I think I have climate anxiety. And in that moment, you realize for the first time, wow, my child has climate anxiety, and I'm still actually discovering what that actually is, right? So I think the more, again, that human tension, that's going to grab someone. And even if you don't get published externally, through earned media. Earned media is what I call when someone says, oh, yes, thank you for the pitch. I would like to publish this in our publication. I can't stress enough how important it is. Just self-publish. There's earned media, then there's owned media. Owned media, we don't own Substack, but that's our content, right? So whether that's on your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your Substack, your own newsletter, whatever it is, I encourage everyone to self-publish as much as they can. And when I'm working with large organizations and corporations on their communication strategy, I always insist, self-publish something first, draw your line in the sand, make your stance and your position on this issue known, because you have no idea really at the end of the day what a journalist is going to do. Now, hopefully you are communicating with an ethical publication or outlet and an ethical journalist, but sometimes maybe you'll get a story or you'll get quoted by them. They might put your quote at the very end, and no one has the attention span to read things till the end anymore. Hopefully many of you still do, but I'm just talking in kind of broad strokes to make that point clear. Give people a reason to care now. There is a term that we use in the PR world and in the journalism world called newsjacking. It's not the most elegant term, but you see creators and influencers using it on a regular basis. Whatever's going on in the news, whether it's a corruption slush fund that's just been exposed, whether it's something going on in Iran, whether it's displaced people in Lebanon, whether it's a data center being, trying to get built on tribal land and a group of women overtaking that, right? Take those examples of the news. And this is just one tactic. Give your take on it, your hot take, whatever it is. Bring it back to your mission, what you want to do for your neighborhood, your home, and your community. And I think, is there one more slide after this? There's social media, right? Oh, these are just some hooks to kind of cut through the noise. And I know we're about 1 minute behind, so I want to go through some of these. These are some quotes and some headlines to just cut through the noise, right? Rather than listing the name of a bill, rather than listing the name of a corporation, rather than saying things like net zero or decarbonization or other terminology that most of the world doesn't understand other than us, that those of us working in climate. Keep it personal, make it ironic, make it provocative. The future parents were warned about is already here. Clean air shouldn't depend on your zip code. Have a strong opinion. Boldness is always rewarded. And then this will bring me to my final slide from my portion, which is navigating social media. A lot of what I just shared on the previous slides applies to this. You want to create content that people can feel. You want to build community, not just followers. I'm imagining, since many of you on this call are very community-driven people, that you understand exactly what I'm talking about. And let people see the progress and momentum of what you're doing, right? Share your wins. I don't think any win is too small. And I don't think we celebrate our wins enough, especially in a time when we're so used to reacting. We're reacting to Donald Trump every day. The media is reacting. We're reacting to political views opposed to us. We're reacting. And it's really time, I think, for advocacy groups across the board, for political parties to stop being so reactive and to come up with their own narratives that are generative and unifying and inspiring and hopeful. And most importantly, show up in ways that feel healthy and sustainable to you. Social media is very draining. I know for me, if I don't feel like I'm pumping out content left and right, I feel like, I failed this week. I didn't put out I had an opinion about this, and actually now that person, they just put out like 6 hot takes on this, and what am I doing? And it's just like, it's really not that important. What is the most important is your health, your family's health, being with your community, asking for support, and then your content, your stories are just going to show up that much more vividly and that much more powerfully. So I know I went a little bit over time, but I hope that spoke to you, and I'll be here to take questions at the end.
Actually, I was hoping, other than just saying thank you for that awesome presentation, I would want you to please remind us the name of your book again.
Sure. I'm having a terrible time. The sun is going down.
Oh, no.
And then the light, and then the reflection from the lagoon I grew up on. The book is called Beyond the Mic Drop: How Our Stories Shift Culture, Power, and Policy. And the subtitle pretty much says it all. This book chronicles my journey from working in legacy media, starting my career at CNN and Associated Press in entertainment and business news, and then moving around the world, living in the Middle East, working from refugee camps, red carpets, conflict regions, and really understanding the mechanics of story. And each chapter ends with something I call mic checks. These are reflections and prompts and exercises and tools and guides to help all of us tap more into our innate storyteller, our innate creator. We're all here to create. We're all here to tell our stories. We're all here to do that. And it covers everything from, kind of, if any of you are into personal development work, rewriting our own narrative, looking at the narratives that we've inherited or that were thrown or projected onto us by our families, by society, by whomever it was, taking that pen and taking our power back. When we do that, it's so much more clear how we can do that for storytelling when it comes to building a movement, storytelling when it comes to creating a business legacy, storytelling when it comes to shifting policy, storytelling when it comes to building collective momentum around shifting policy. And it really breaks down how stories play into larger systems. I look at systems as narratives that have just been told so many times that they hardened into infrastructure. And narratives are made of stories. Stories are the scaffolding blocks. We already know we can rewrite stories, so I think we've got a better shot at actually recreating narratives and systems than we actually have been led to believe. So that's the book. It's available on Amazon. If you have boycotted Amazon, it's available on barnesandnoble.com and all the other online stores. And I can share the links here, and I can also share them with Mom's Clean Air Force, and hopefully we can distribute those. But it launches June 10th. I need pre-orders and people to leave reviews on June 10th. And I would love to hear from all of you and hear what you think about it.
And I promise folks who have commented how awesome your presentation was and how helpful it was, that we will save some space, I promise, at the end where you can ask her some questions. We're going to quickly get through this next part here, though. And thank you again, Melissa. That was really, really helpful. And I'm excited to apply that to even my own work. I'm actually working on an op-ed right now. So that was really helpful. And just transitioning, like I said, some taking your story and also using it to engage with your elected officials is super important. And that's, I think, one of the great things that Moms Clean Air Force does. So when we are talking about that, we're submitting our public comments and testifying. One of the great things that Moms Clean Air Force does is that we reach out to our greater community, our volunteers, when we have open comment periods where the EPA is looking for comments. We've done this for tailpipe pollution, the endangerment finding, and many more. That said, we give our advocates, our volunteers, fact sheets, and then we have them write their personal story. Spend 2 to 3 minutes writing what it means to them to have the safeguards or protections that their families need. And then meeting with the elected officials directly. We take a lot of our advocates with us to meetings. We have folks talk about their personal stories. Once again, in Michigan, we had folks advocating everything from wanting to have stronger protections, from for our air and water, as well as making sure that, we're advocating for positive things like electric school buses on our roads. And then, of course, we have press conferences and rallies that we do and events. Check out our calendar on our website. See if there's something going on in your area. If there isn't something going on in your area, maybe look for something like, for example, there's Climate Strikes Day that is coming up, which is in June. Maybe get a bunch of folks together and make your own climate signs. Take a picture, post it and tag Moms Clean Air Force and others. And make your voice known that way. And then also, as we saw this one great example of our two teeniest advocates who have made a video, but we also take them to our meetings. In fact, true story, I brought a family to a meeting, and one of the little kids climbed up on my representative's lap and fell asleep during the meeting. And it was absolutely adorable. And it was really neat to see my representative all of a sudden put their guard down and talk about clean air and safeguards in a very personal way, because it was personal. We were bringing our families and making it that way. And of course, artwork. I was hoping to pull an example, but I just recently we had a bunch of events, and you saw in a slide or two ago that we had a press conference, and at that press conference, we had a poster that it looks kind of like this, and the kids filled it out, and it had electric school buses on it. It had windmills, all sorts of things. We had the kids color it, make a presentation, and then we talked about the importance of having, like I said, the safeguards that we need for our families. It was a really neat way to show how much folks in our community care about these things. Next slide. We also encourage people to get out and vote. We are a mom partisan organization. That means we are talking with folks on both sides of the aisle. We think caring for our kids' health, caring for clean air and our climate, it should be something that everybody cares for. We have midterm elections coming up on November 3rd. Take a moment, share with folks why you are going to vote, why you care about voting for clean air and climate. Um, you know, Also, I volunteer and knock on doors in my area. I've also done phone banking and postcard parties, reminding folks to get out and vote, to make sure that they're registered, to make sure that they know if their candidates are climate action candidates, if they're going to be making sure that your kids have the best safeguards possible. All right. This is where I get you all back in and involved again. We have a little quiz. It's just for fun. There's no pressure whatsoever. And we'll just use the chat function for this. So how many senators are there, U.S. senators? Do you want to take a moment? Yes. Good job, everyone. 100. Awesome. So, take a moment if you haven't already, find out who your senators are and look them up. We'll get to that in just a minute. Now, my next question is, how many representatives are, how many national representatives do we have? And this is forever ingrained in my mind because we used to have a someone on our national team who gave us an assignment where we had to buy something for a specific dollar amount, and it was that how many representatives we had in the House of Representatives, and it's 435. Which, if you've ever had to buy something for 35 people for $4.35, it was one of the greatest challenges I had. All right. Which party has the majority in both chambers of Congress? All right. I see some smirks and some faces. I'm sorry. I didn't bring down the mood. I hope I didn't. Yes, it is Republicans. All right. Now we get to find out. Please let me know in the chat, who is your senator and representative? And bonus points if you know your state rep and state senator as well. So for me, it's Congresswoman, it is Senator Alyssa Slack, and she used to be my congresswoman in all fairness. And then, of course, we have Gary Peters. Oh, yeah, if you're in DC, you are in a pickle. I'm sorry for that. Oh, yeah, Tim Klein. Yep, yep. Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to play this little game along with me. But it is really important, once again, that we engage with the folks that are the decision makers and letting them know they work for us. They are supposed to be protecting our families, our kids, and it's super important. Here is another diagram of our branches of government. If you are a person who likes to follow folks on Facebook from time to time, there is a gentleman that goes out there and asks folks in the lines to rallies. We won't say which rally, and asks what the three branches of government are. You would be surprised how many people don't know that we have a legislative, an executive, and a judicial branch. And unfortunately, right now, they are not in concert with a lot of things that we care about, but we have an opportunity to advocate and make sure that our voices are heard, that we are getting out there and letting folks know that we want climate champions in those spaces, and then doing the best we can to make sure that they get there.
Elizabeth, do you want me to take? Oh, I guess maybe I skipped ahead. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. Do you want me to take this one?
That's you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And thank you, and I'll turn it back to Sam.
Perfect. Sorry for the skipping around of slides. Another important exercise in advocacy is power mapping and figuring out who the actual decision makers are. There's lots of people making lots of decisions at any given time. And if you're in contact with the one that has no power over the decision that you want to affect, you're unfortunately wasting both of your time. So how can we figure out who is in charge of what? And we do that by something called power mapping. So you can do this. I think it's much more productive to do this in conversation with your neighbors, with other advocates that have a sense of these things. But basically, the way that things are broken down is between the local, state, and the national levels of government. The national is often called the federal government. At the local level, you have mayors, school boards, city councils, county councils. They make decisions, maybe about if a data center is built in your community, right? So you want to make sure that they know how that could impact the air quality or climate change or all of those different things. And then you might want to get involved with the state Department of the Environment. Each state has one of these. They're sort of named something different in each state, but generally there's some type of department that works on environmental issues. Those are the people you want to talk to at the state level. And then you can also work with the regional EPA. So the EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency. It is a federal entity. It's part of the part of the executive branch of government, but they also have regional EPAs that cover your state. You can look up which region you're in on the EPA website. And then lastly, at the federal and national level, again, you have things like the EPA headquarters, the Department of Energy, DOE, Department of Transportation, DOT, and then the White House Council on Environmental Quality. So the president's folks that work on environmental quality issues. Awesome. I'll hand it back to you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Sam. And here are two words that I didn't know until I got into advocacy, what they meant, grassroots and grass tops. The top photo is a partnership with storytelling. This is Sarah's local EJ group that uses art for advocacy to mobilize community members. Grassroots is at the bottom. Rep. Summer Lee from Pittsburgh alongside Amita and Adam met with a musician and became well-known climate advocates with Grass Tops. So that is the difference between the two of them, both super important to what we do here. And who else has influence in your area? Obviously, there's some examples here, and feel free to put a couple in the chat if you can think of some more there. I know faith leaders also have a big pull where I'm at. Anyone else have any thoughts? Yeah, nonprofits. Yep. Awesome. And now I will turn it back to Sam.
Perfect. Thanks, Elizabeth. We're almost done, I promise. So then we'll have lots of time for Q&A right on schedule, and we can open it up to all of you. But the last thing that we want to, oh my gosh, Elizabeth, I did not know you're going to pull that hat out, but that is awesome. So we want everyone to feel empowered to contact their elected officials. So that can be, again, at any level of government. It's obviously a lot easier to get in touch with your school board than it is to get in touch with your congressperson, but it is certainly still possible. You actually can show up to their office at their local office or in DC. If you're ever in DC, you can definitely reach out to me and we can show up at their office together. But the ways that you can contact your elected officials from all the way from the mayor level to the congressional level is that you can call them, you can email them, you can set up a meeting, visit their office. And another way that's sort of underrated is tagging them in social media posts or writing op-eds that talk about them, right? Because then they have to see this information. And so the Congressional Switchboard is basically a place where you can call in and they'll redirect you to your congressperson's office. So it's one number, you can call it and say, I live in this district, and they'll say, perfect, we're connecting you with that office. And then you'll likely talk to an intern who will take notes on your issues, and they legally have to give those notes to the congressperson. So these actually do really influence policy decisions, because if members of Congress are getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls and emails every day from the people that vote to elect them about data centers or about air quality or about climate change, they're much more likely to take action on that because they want to get reelected, right? We're the people that make that decision as constituents. So you want to make sure that they know you're a constituent and that this is important to you. If you do get a meeting with them, you can always ask for that. And then when you set that up, from there, you want to share your story. So again, we've talked a lot about what your story is and doing that succinctly and in a compelling way. You want to make it personal, right? And emotional. It's not just about the facts. It's about why do you care? Why should they care? You can bring a fact sheet, right? That will make you feel more empowered. It'll make you look like you know exactly what you're talking about, which nobody ever actually does, right? But the most important part is sharing your story and also having a clear call to action. So telling them, hey, this is my story and this is why I want you to do X, Y, and Z thing. That can be a piece of legislation that you want them to support. It can be having them work on a specific issue that you care about, or make a public statement, or make a social media post. There's lots of different things that you can ask them, but you want to make sure that you're leaving that meeting and they know exactly what you want them to do. So that is a little overview. I will pass it back to Elizabeth to close us out before we open it up to all of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Melissa, for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us tonight. Now, like I promised, I would open up the floor to ask any questions that you may have, especially if you have any questions for Melissa. You can always get in touch with Sam and I via email. It is our first initial, our last name at momscleanairforce.org if you ever want to get in touch with us. But once again, please take advantage and feel free to either put something in the chat or, of course, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions as well.